If you want to become a therapist, there are many degrees you can get, but they fall into two overarching categories. The doctoral level, where you get a doctor in front of your name and can call yourself a psychologist, and the master's level. But which one is the best choice? That's what we will be briefly discussing in this video. So let's dive in. If you want to become a therapist, one of the biggest decisions you will make is whether to get your doctoral degree or your master's degree. There are pros and cons to either path, but the first thing I want to say right out of the gate is that the research is really clear that the type of degree you get does not matter in terms of the later quality of your work. They've compared clinicians who have their PhD, master's degree, even MD, because some psychiatrists offer therapy, and they all get equally good results. That being said, there are some logistical pieces to consider. Some of those will differ state by state, so you have to check what kinds of degrees can actually lead to becoming a fully licensed therapist in your state. Those kinds of details are covered in depth all over the internet, so let me just give my own personal thoughts from my experience. In general, I tend to advise people toward a master's versus doctoral degree, even though I got my PhD and I'm glad I did. So let me first say why it was right for me, and then why for most people I might advise against it, especially if you are sure you want to be a therapist and actually work with clients versus doing assessments or becoming a researcher or a professor at a research-focused school. So why was it the right choice for me, even though I knew I wanted to become a therapist? Well, for one, I'd always known I wanted to be a therapist, which meant I was ready to go to graduate school right after college. I was also really comfortable in academia and in fact liked being in school. On top of that, I was an English major in college, so I was very comfortable writing. So the idea of having to write a dissertation, not to mention all the other endless papers and assessment reports, didn't really bother me so much. Now, to be clear, even I found doing a research dissertation stressful, but some people find it downright traumatic, where it takes them years and years to finish. Beyond all the writing, my program also required 3 statistics classes that were each fairly intense. Now, I love math, so that was fine, but not everyone does, and certainly not every therapist does, nor needs to. They're very different skill sets, so this is something to really think about. Now, there's another doctoral level option called a PsyD instead of PhD that doesn't require as much on the math and research side. It's more clinically focused, so probably just basically better, but going the PsyD route is likely to land you with twice the amount of debt. Still, a PsyD program is worth thinking about if you have the money and really do want a doctor in front of your name, and of course you know you want to work clinically. So in short, for me it was worth having a few extra years in school, given that I was going to have a long career in front of me and I enjoyed being in school. I also knew I wanted to take insurance, so that played a part. After all, insurance reimbursement is a bit better for psychologists than professional counselors. So if my story sounds a bit like yours, in other words, you're young, you're comfortable with academic hoops, you're sure that this is the career for you, then getting your PhD might be the right option. Again, you'll probably want to get your doctoral degree if you're interested in research or doing assessments. But if you really know that you just want to become a therapist, then it probably makes more sense to get your master's degree, especially if either writing or math are tricky areas for you, or if you just don't want to take courses that are completely unnecessary and irrelevant. The truth is, even though you take more classes getting your PhD, that doesn't mean you're getting more clinical training. Both types of degree offer the same amount of clinical training, in other words, training in how to actually do psychotherapy, which probably explains the research I mentioned, which shows that master's level therapists get just as good as results as doctoral level therapists. The reason that the PhD route is 2 or 3 more years of school is because of all those other courses you have to take that have nothing to do with being a therapist. Courses like statistics or research methods, the history of psychology, assessment. Learning to do assessments was one of the most painful things I'd ever done, at least the IQ assessment. I remember having to record myself doing a full IQ assessment, which can take 3 hours, while only being allowed to make 2 mistakes. And a mistake could be something as small as forgetting to hold the timer here instead of here. I was in tears trying to get that assignment done, and it was all sort of unnecessary given that I knew I didn't want to do IQ assessments in my work. In any case, if you just want to see clients, I think a master's degree is just generally the best bang for your buck. It's a very versatile degree. It takes only 2 years versus 4 or 5 years in school, and it allows you to work as a psychotherapist. Every state is a little bit different, so you have to figure out what is true for your state. But in general, you have options like becoming an LPC, licensed professional counselor, an LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist, or LCSW, licensed clinical social worker. And once you get out there, it doesn't really make a difference what degree you have. Those are all great degrees, especially if this isn't a first career for you, or you already have a family perhaps. I can't imagine having to go through a PhD program and write a dissertation while having children, for instance. Also, if you're switching careers maybe later in life, you just might be more eager to get out there and start making a difference in the world, or even just to start making money sooner. Yes, you might make a bit more money as a psychologist, but you are pushing back when you can start making money by a couple years. Now again, if you are young, that might be worth it because you have your whole career to make those years up. But on the other hand, just because you have a doctor in front of your name does not mean you will be making loads of money. What probably matters more than anything is your actual abilities, especially if you end up going the private practice route. I've seen many psychologists barely able to fill their caseloads and other master's level therapists managing to stay full even while charging way more. Now, some of that simply has to do with how confident you are, how good at marketing and networking. But having a PhD is not going to do that work for you. You're going to have to figure out how to get clients if you decide not to work at an agency one way or another. And most clients aren't going to care what kind of degree you have. And certainly your colleagues won't either, not if they have their heads on straight. Some of the most famous therapists who are inventing cutting-edge forms of therapy and who are thought of as leaders in our field, many of them only have their master's degree. In the real world, people tend to know that psychologists aren't better therapists. And by the way, that will probably become even more true as our field shifts over to regular use of what is called outcome monitoring. Outcome monitoring is when clients are asked how they are doing each week in order to track their progress. There's a lot of research that tracking outcomes leads to better results, so there's a push to make it standard practice, which I'm actually excited about because I think our field could use a little bit more accountability. But it also means that instead of having to prove ourselves based on what degree we have, we can show the value of our work through how much we're actually helping people. So if you trust yourself to actually do the hard work of becoming a good therapist, that is ultimately what is going to count. Yes, it is an ego boost to have a doctor in front of your name, but do we really need to feed our egos? I mean, I'm not trying to be hypocritical about that. I chose to get a doctorate, and I'm sure some of it was ego. And to this day, I know my insecure parts sometimes really like being able to call myself doctoratorials, especially if I'm giving a presentation or talking to professionals that I don't know. And that was even more true when I was younger because I just looked so freaking young 15 years ago. So it helped me feel less anxious about that to have a little doctor in front of my name. That being said, I'd love to be the voice for us all collectively trying to not get hung up on superficial things like that. I mean, if there was science behind it, that would be one thing, but there isn't. It's just an illusion that having a doctor before your name means anything when it comes to your competency as a therapist. And if you can remember that, then probably you will feel just fine getting your master's degree and save yourself a lot of headache in the process. Now, whether you choose to go for the master's or doctoral degree, you will need to pick a particular program. So in the next video, I will go over some things to consider when determining which program is best for you. I hope this video was helpful. Again, every person's journey is unique and I can't say what the right choice is for you, but I wish you the best in finding the path forward that you will feel empowered by. Thank you so much for watching. If you are liking my content, I would so appreciate it if you're willing to like or subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.